Welcome, Laure.
Hi, Brinsley.
Nice to have you join me today. We're both underprepared and about to just freestyle this, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's how the best thing happens. I'm prepared.
I agree. And you've just come out of a coaching session, and I think you're about to go into another coaching session in a bit. So you've got a busy diary in this independent coaching practice of yours.
I do at the moment. Yeah, it's pretty busy. I'm not going to complain. Yeah, a nice mix. Bit of coaching, bit of mentoring, bit of supervision. Just how I like it. I like the variety. So, yeah.
Coaching, mentoring, and supervision. Brilliant. You're already answering some of my first questions. And I guess what we're going to look at today is, how have you got your diary so busy? What's your journey to building that coaching practice look like? So would you say in a nutshell then coaching, mentoring, and supervision is the makeup of your business? Is there any other elements that bring in revenue when it comes to the coaching practice?
Well, maybe a little bit at the moment because I'm a published author now. Super exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, I participated in a book last year, which came out. It was launched in October. So that's been quite an achievement as well. Pretty exciting. So,
I feel totally unprepared because I have no idea about this book. So can you is it a coaching book? Is it a fiction book? What is it?
So it's more, well, I wouldn't say necessarily fixing, but it's 10 of us got together and each one of us created a chapter over something that we experienced and overcame. And how we did that was the process. So it's, mental health related.
Gotcha. And I said fiction, by the way, not fixing, in case
sorry.
that was
That's my hearing.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. So you're a contributor to a chapter or to a section of the book with 9 others around mental health.
Yeah, it was really exciting because I'm a big believer of vision board, and it had been there for a few years and it happened. So yeah, that was quite nice.
Nice. Is it published yet?
It is, yeah. It was launched at the end of October last year. So it's out there. I can share the link if you want. But yeah, super exciting.
Nice. And what's the name of it?
The Awakened Warrior Toolkit. I can share it to you if you want.
There we go. Let's get that plugged in the interview. Great, love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no.
You're a published author now. That must help with credibility and building that coaching practice.
Yeah, I think. Well, I suppose it's a bit early to really see the effect. Although yes, the bigger effect. But yes, that's true. I'm not going to lie. I've seen some. I got some people getting in touch after that and so on. So yeah, that helps. I'm not going to say no, but let's see the full extent. But in any case, it wasn't the intention behind it. It was more about the sharing where I was at, thanks to a few things that had happened, and how it's helped me as well in who I am now and who I am as a coach as well. So yeah, and how it helps me help others as well. So it's super exciting.
Before we get into, I guess, the core elements of the conversation today, are you happy to unpack that a little bit more? I'm interested about what you shared in the book, what that experience was, how it's helped you develop as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So it came, when did it all happen? Yeah, it was last year. So it's happened. I've always wanted to write a book. That's for many, many years, like since I was a teenager. So that was at the back of my mind. But, it's like, oh, I wish someday. And then the opportunity came up and I was like, yeah, I just literally jumped. So initially I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about, because I think we all have many topics we can talk about, but because of where I was at that time, what was most alive in me was that And it is actually something that's come up over the years for me, that sense of belonging. So, because, you know, I'm French originally, but I grew up in Spain, and then I spent a fair amount of time in the US, and then I moved to UK. And at the moment, I'm back to Spain. So, yeah, have to keep up. So that was really alive for me, that sense of belonging or not belonging. And that's also something that I remember was very present when I first started my coaching journey. It was something that I found had its up and downs, of course, or pros and cons, whatever you want to refer to as. And I talk in that chapter the impact that that feeling had on me, but also how I finally, you know, accepted it, that feeling, what's evolved, what was behind the need that I had behind that wanting to belong or feeling like I belonged, and so on. Yeah, and now I can say that actually I do feel like I belong somewhere. So, but yeah, the main topic was that. And again, I chose that because that was a recurrent theme, you know, since very early on, because of all those travels and movings, and so yeah. And I think it was even more alive when the book opportunity came, because precisely after the pandemic as well, and the different, because I came back to Spain, but it wasn't my intention to be here this long, because I intended to be back in London already. So there was really a sense of clash at that point that brought back that sense of belonging, not belonging, that I was sort of fighting with myself. So that's a very lengthy answer for such a short question, isn't it? Did I actually answer your question? Not sure. Yeah. Oops, you're muted.
Thank you. And you did answer my question. I was interested in the experience that you spoke about in the book, and then also how it's supported you as a human being, as a coach. So really nice to hear that answer. And yeah, belonging is such a big topic, isn't it? In personal development and I guess our psyche, right? Thank you. I'm going to check the book out and check the chapter out.
Thanks.
So let's have a look at your professional context that we just spoke about briefly. Coach, mentor, and supervisor. So correct me if I'm wrong, your mentoring work is specific. It's ICF mentoring, and that's the work you do for Animas, with Animas students who are engaging in ICF mentoring. Is that right?
Yeah, and I do also have some mentoring, provide some mentoring from outside at Animas. And it is focused on the ICF. So because now I'm an ICF PCC credentialed coach, so I can offer for both level, for the ACC and PCC. And yeah, definitely focused on those core competencies, the code of ethics. How are we matching those in our sessions? How are we not? Looking at it, but not just on a practical level as to, am I demonstrating open questions? Yeah, that's great. But what might be behind that as well, in terms of, you know, if you are finding a bit challenging using a particular skill, what might be causing that challenge? So there's a depth as well to it.
Why is it important, the mentoring?
Well, why is it important? Is it important? I think it depends on the reason we are going for it and what we expect as well for it. In my case, it's because I really do believe on the core competencies that have been set by the ICF. I think it's nice as well to abide by a certain code of ethics. So there is a sense of belonging, surprising. But also I personally like having that sort of, I often say in my sessions, you know, the core competencies are not the enemy. They're a friend, really, because they help us, you know, staying in the game, and instead of playing something completely different. So why is it important? I think if we are interested on being part of something, on abiding by something, then that's important to me. But I also recognize that some people might not be as interested or might not find it as important as me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think there's also that aspect of, I really like the interaction with people, because it's different than a coaching or a supervision session. I find that, you know, the mentoring gives a bit more, even if coaching, of course, is a collaborative conversation, definitely, but in the mentoring, I allow a bit more myself, my experience to come in, perhaps a bit more than in the coaching sessions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I really like just those conversations with people, and those light bulb moment as well, you know, when we self-reflect on something, we look at, well, what happened here, what's happening for us in that moment, and having that conversation and those moments of, oh yeah, or yeah, actually this is what's going on for me. So there is some kind of realizations going on, which are really beautiful to witness.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, coaching, mentoring, supervising, I'm sure it does give you that variety, and there's lots of overlap, right, and nuance in that, and you get that variety through those different ways of working. So I guess you're supervising coaches, maybe other practitioners, you're ICF mentoring with Animas students or coaches outside of the Animas community in your private practice. Who are you coaching? What sort of topics do you coach on? What sort of people do you coach?
That's really varied over the years, if I'm honest. Right now, it's completely varied. So I get all type. There's some clients are more seeking coaching around work. Some others are more about personal stuff, as in whether it's them within themselves wanting to, you know, the personal growth aspect, or maybe in their personal life, how they relate to others and the relationships that they might have with different people, whether it's, you know, family member or at work and so on. So there's, I think you used the word nuance earlier, and I think that's quite spot on, because even in the coaching sessions, I find that might be there as well in terms of the topics they bring. It's quite varied, different backgrounds, a different type of people. There's no specific, where before they would have been. So, because I remember there was a time shortly after I qualified, you know, everyone was like, oh, I want, you know, what's my niche? What's your niche? And I've really struggled with that. By the way, if I go off topic, feel free to post me. But yeah, so there was, what was alive for me were back then, it was the family coaching. In relation to, you know, my relation with in-laws, with siblings, with parents, things like that. So it was very focused on that. So there was a time that, yeah, I did have that niche, but it's evolved. I think as I evolved myself as a practitioner, I was just like, no, why choose one specific type of topic, when actually for me what's important is, who do I have in front of me? Do I feel like we have a good rapport, and do I feel like what I can offer is matching what the client seems to need at the moment? So yeah, it again quite varied.
So you've kind of, as you say, you've evolved from having a kind of a niche, relationships, family, maybe systemic, to actually being all about working with the person in front of you and what their needs are, and that context, and adapting your style to that. And I guess as you've grown as a practitioner, the experience to be able to hold that uncertainty when you go into a space with a client is something that you've built over time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I remember at the beginning it was like, what? No, You know, I think the confidence I've grown over the years is key. Like, I remember when I trained with Animas, it was probably a time of my life where the confidence was more on the lower end than on the upper one. But then there was that personal growth and looking at the world differently. And as I went step by step, the confidence that I feel nowadays in a session is the complete opposite in a good way. So yeah.
Good to hear. I saw a picture of you from back in the day. Nick posted it. It's from like an old Animas picture. I was like, oh, look, that's Laure. You had short hair.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm kind of curious how long you've been around the Animas world and been around the coaching world. So let's track that. When did you train as a coach? Like how long have you been doing this?
I think I trained, I can never remember if it was 2013 or 2014. I think. Yeah, I think 2014. Yeah, and I was in the training room. So at that time I was I was in the training room with Marcus and Bronwyn. So the three of us trained together. Yeah, I'm just going back to those days for a minute. Wow. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. But yeah, so that was in 2014, I think it was. But yeah, I remember I was sitting at the front, like very quiet. Who would say, right? Very quiet, very shy. Yeah, working out, you know, during those observation moments. It was in person as well. So we would have those bits. It was trained in a hotel, so we would have those bits where we would go and practice in triads and so on. And I still remember the power of those practices together. And yeah, oh my God, it's been such a long, definitely a big change, particularly in confidence. Definitely, yeah. And then, you know, going out and starting to coach some people. Yeah, I remember taking it slowly though. So I would take like 2 clients at a time. That initially felt like they were friends of friends. And then from there, evolving. But yeah, those first sessions, very much about, oh, am I doing what I'm supposed to with the tools? How was my question? And so on. And yeah, and I did it. Yeah.
You did, and that's been 10 years, I guess, in the making. Interesting to hear about you talking about confidence being a big, I guess, evolving piece for you in that journey. And I also remember my first day training. I remember my first coaching session and my hand was shaking under the table like this when I was just coaching in front of my peers.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wow, noticing that level of confidence to do something, and also noticing how much I cared about it as well, because I was nervous. I don't know if that came through for you in your, I guess, just decisions to train as a coach and how important that career change was for you. But let's have a look at that. Before we do, why do you do what you do? You know, what is it about you as a human being that has you show up as a coach?
Well, different things. I like connecting with people. I enjoy talking. I enjoy understanding and helping. I think because of my own personal journey, looking at, wow, I've changed so much. I've overcome some few limiting beliefs. I think it's the potential as well that it has, that I sense that sometimes we can underestimate the power of those 60 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever long you want to do it. And then seeing the change. Like recently I had a client who had been out of work for nearly 2 years and came to me. We were looking at working on that. Under 3 months, that was it. A new job had come up. So sometimes, you know, that looking at the mindsets, those limiting belief, the perception, changing it, and things like that. You know, from 2 years with nothing at home to 3 months later having to choose which one. That was, you know, witnessing this is like, wow, I've done something good. I've helped to something good, because actually the client is the one who did it, but you know what I mean? So yeah, I think, yeah, just being able to support them on getting to the change they're seeking, really.
And if we were going to go down into the onion a little bit of that example that you've given, what is it about you then that really appreciates connecting with other people and helping them? Why?
I think it's partly, again, I think the sense of connection, to, you know, to make some kind of, to help them getting to being better with themselves, to support them on finding a happier place, basically. Why is it important? I'm not sure I want to go down this road, but considering when you look at the world at the moment, you know, at least you're feeling I can add a bit of good in it. But I think for me, it was also reflecting on my own journey, how I've changed. You know, just coming back to the same example, the confidence. It's not just that, like it had some different impacts on me, but just taking the same example, that was massive. It had, you know, you change one thing and it has an impact on your own life. And I think, you know, yeah, being able to do that change, to support to that change, that's what's important. There's a, you know, there's a meaning that, it gives a sort of purpose, perhaps, or meaning to what we do. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I did wonder if there was kind of a parallel process in terms of how coaching, training as a coach has supported you in your development with confidence, and how that's been so important for you, as you mentioned. And then I guess being in a position to help other people do the same must be really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what's surprising for me is when I joined the Animas to train as a coach, I had no idea what it was going to bring to me. So, you know, I didn't go into the training with, oh, I'm going to build a business out of this. I just went because I needed a change. I didn't know what that change was, but there you go. You know, the training as a coach has definitely completely turned around my life without me having that expectation. So I think, again, I think we underestimate sometimes the power of it.
What did you do before you trained as a coach?
I've done many things. Because I actually, so initially I studied international trade, and I worked in a couple of import-export companies in Spain, and I realized that wasn't for me. It wasn't the world I wanted to be in. It wasn't, I felt completely lost. And that's when I came to London. I did a lot of things. I trained as well as a Spanish teacher for English speakers. So I trained as well for maternity nanny as well. So working with newborns, hence the family aspect as well that came up later in my, so working a lot with kids. I also worked in entertainment department in hotels. So again, you know, being with people, in contact in people. And French and Spanish teacher for adults as well. So there was a real mix, not all at the same time, but yeah, again, there was a sense of what do I really want to do? So I was enjoying the different things I was doing at the different times. but nothing was really fulfilling. And again, the coaching appeared just out of the blue. Somehow I often share this story that I had 3 signs. I had never heard about coaching before, but it's true that I've always been interested in psychology and stuff like that. And I remember I had 3 things. There was a conversation with a relative who first told me about coaching. The very next day, there was an article in a magazine about a famous actress having used a coach. And I was like, interesting. I was just talking about that. And the very next day, or that very same day, I can't remember exactly, but it doesn't matter. I was on the tube seated, and in front of me, someone was reading the Metro, you know, the newspaper. And there was an advert from Animas.
Wow.
So there you go. And I was like, oh, so I checked it out and I booked myself into the intro day, which was run by Nick himself back then. And that's how it all started. But again, I got curious. I was like, oh yeah, maybe but no idea what I was going to do with it.
So you went in with no expectation after getting those 3 signs. This was about 10 years ago. Let's have a look at that 10 years then. What I heard you say was that it was very, I think, incremental, to use my words, that you were having 2 clients at a time. It was quite a process, slow process, perhaps. Don't know if slow is the fair word, but maybe incremental.
Definitely.
When you think about the overarching journey, the 10 years of where you were and where you are now, having an independent coaching practice, what overarching themes come up for you as being important for that business building journey?
Patience. And I'm not good at patience. Even nowadays, I struggle with it. But I think patience for me and acceptance, that's, yeah, acceptance. Because it's not like it's been smooth going up. There's been ups and downs, because that's life. So, you know, it's, yeah, the patience and acceptance. There's, you know, it's the same as sometimes you're, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's not consistent. It's just accepting that some days, some months are better, some others are not so great, depending on what you expect, of course. And also the, I'm going to say mood. You know, you have moments in life where you are in a better place, some others where you're feeling like, not so much. So, and it's okay. You know, it's all part of the journey and the process. So yeah, patience and acceptance.
Mm-hmm. So accepting around the variability of the income or the profession month to month.
Yeah, but also perhaps even your personal life, you know, we have lives, we are human, and sometimes things don't necessarily happen how we want them to, or something gets in the way or something, or whatever. So it's making me think as well, is because right now what's coming to mind is as well the availability. Like, you know, you might be at some point where perhaps you're having a job, and therefore you're going to dedicate only 5 hours a week, or 2, or 1 hour every 2 weeks. But then things change, and now you're like, oh, I can actually dedicate 3 days a week to this. Or, you know, maybe actually next month it's best that I don't dedicate any time at all. I don't know. Do you see what I mean? It's like, yeah, I think there's a sense of just, yeah, adaptability as well. And
and would you say, because I think when I heard you speak, what I was thinking about was us as human beings and the spectrum of mental health that we move across, and building a business can take a lot from us, and how we need to pay attention to where we're at in the different seasons and chapters of our life, particularly when it comes to mental health. Would you say that was a big factor for you when you think about that patience and acceptance, or is that not what you were thinking?
It is definitely a factor. Yes. But that's the factor for me. Like for someone else, it might be different. So, you know, sometimes you have coaches that might already have some kind of business built, or the type of niche that might already being present, whatever. So the needs are going to be different. Where also someone that is starting completely from the scratch, perhaps is definitely going to need some different things. So it definitely has importance for me. I don't know if it's necessarily those key elements, but it's nice to have the awareness of that, because I think sometimes we can fall into, oh my God, I'm never going to make it, or oh my goodness, this is never going to happen, or no, I'm not good at this, or, you know, and it's just like, well, actually, maybe that's how I feel right now, but tomorrow I might feel differently. And it comes with the experience, but also how we feel. Because, yeah, you know, if you have something happening in your personal life, that's going to impact you as well. So it's just recognizing that.
Mm-hmm. And do you recognize that looking back, or did you recognize that in the moment?
I recognize that looking back, and now I'm able to recognize it in the moment. Yes, like for example, I can tell you one thing. I'm never ever gonna have consultation on a Friday. No more, never ever again. That's, you know, why? Because I know that on a Friday, I don't work Fridays afternoon. That's, you know, it's like, no, because my mind is already somewhere else. So if I'm not going to be, then I won't do it. So yeah, it's also in that sense that I was sharing. It's just, you know, getting to know yourself as well a bit.
Mm-hmm. And I guess there's a lot of fine tuning and getting to know yourself that happens across 10 years of building a business.
Yeah. Yeah. And the practice, you know, because I feel that sometimes we just want to start running before we've learned to walk. And it's more in that sense, I think, that I was referring to acceptance, where, you know, step by step, just find the steps that feel the right, that are slightly challenging, but not over challenging, so it feels too high of a mountain. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was an important part of your development, then, understanding where you were at in your developmental process, professionally speaking.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the self-reflection that's really helpful. Yeah, definitely.
When did you go full time?
When did I go full time? That's an interesting question, because I went full time back in 2016. And then I joined Animas as a full-time mentor back then. And then I went from one position to another. So it was full-time without being full-time. So yes and no, because I suppose, so if I go back to when I first joined Animas team and be the full-time mentor, I would still have my own clients on the side. So was it full-time with what I want related to coaching? Yes, since 2016. Was it full-time fully my private practice? No, because there was a bit of both. So yeah. So again, 2016 as full-time coaching related work, but there was a bit of the both.
Mm-hmm. And what's it like to make that transition?
In what sense?
So making the transition from being employed, I assume, whilst having a private practice, coaching people on the side in your lunch breaks in the evenings, to them being, actually, I'm now an independent coach. Yes, you took a role with Animas, and yes, you've kind of gone in and out of those sort of employed roles, if you like, whether they're portfolio pieces or the whole piece. But that transition, what's it like for you to make that?
Well, I think there was a bit of a mix, because you have that part. Well, it felt good because and that's what I needed anyway. So you would have some people that would be like taking the jump and fully self-employed. Where me, I was in a position where I was like, okay, so I am part employed and part self-employed. So it felt quite good, if I'm honest. I was lucky in that sense. Because it didn't feel like it was too much of a leap, or what's the word I'm looking for, like not uncertainty, but there was a sort of safety net, so I could dedicate some time to my business at the same time that I was being employed partly.
Mm-hmm. So you can kind of transition in a kind of phased approach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about the practical hurdles to building your business? I think the patience and acceptance might come under the emotional hurdles. I was going to file them away in different cabinets. Did you recognize any practical hurdles to building a business?
Well, for me, it was the energy that I was putting behind whatever I was doing. What's worked best for me was the word to mouth. So really getting in touch with, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I recognize that I was consistent in doing that. So that I would say was what worked best for me. That being said, I did try other stuff. There was a book that I used, which probably many of the people might have heard of it, which back then it's Get Clients Now by CJ Hayden, and that really worked for me. It gave me the opportunity to really create a monthly calendar where I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, today I'm doing this, so it gave me that sense of moving forward without an overwhelmed feeling. So that was quite good. I mean, definitely tried the putting some signs on community boards and things like that. But the word to mouth, that's what made it for me. And that's how I get most of my clients nowadays.
So all word of mouth, through relationships, creating clients through conversations, speaking about what you do. Uh-huh. That must be great for a confidence builder as well, then, if you're developing confidence over time.
It does, yes. Yeah. But again, it was progressive, because that's what I needed. That's what worked for me, Like I said, some people might be like, no, different situation, different people might just go, no, I'm just taking the jump and see what happens. Where me, it was more, little by little.
How did you do it? How did you do the telling people what you were doing? Was it people you were working with, friends and family? Did you just crowbar it into conversations? Did it come up naturally in conversations? What did it look like?
You've just named it. Friends and family. Like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is, this is what I'm currently offering. So I think there's also some a sense of, what do I feel like doing right now? Because I offer ICF mentoring program. So that was like, hey, this is right now, this is what I'm offering. This is the package. So I was clear on what I was going to offer and when, and then that went out. But my message was clear. And this is what definitely I've noticed is if I am clear in what I want to offer at any given time, then the message is going to come up much clearly. That's why, again, coming back to Friday afternoons, there's no way that message is not coming across on Fridays. But, clarity on the message, the energy that, I think more and more big believer on the energy that you feel. That's what you you will be transmitting and getting back. So yeah.
And when you say the energy that you feel, are you tapping into the people you're speaking to as well to figure out if they feel like a good fit for you? And then you can start naming what you do and talking about it, rather than this blanket scattergun approach, just telling everyone and anyone. Was there kind of thought behind that?
Oh yeah, no, it's not like I'm coming in and being like, hey guys, this is what I do. No, it's something that comes naturally, I think. Yeah, because it's in the conversation, and then you feel the interest of the person and whether that's something you want to share or not, and so on. So it's not like, I've done this as well, and that did not work for me. You know, when you go to those what's it called? The word is not going to come to me, but those meetings where
Networking.
Thank you. So networking events, I did so many, and very little came out of that. But I did it at a point that it wasn't right for me. I'm not even sure it would still be right for me, to be honest, because there was a sense of, this is not natural, it's forced, is, you know, but that's for me. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't work for someone else, because clearly you have people that it works wonders for. But that's why I was referring to with the energy as well. It's like, is this what suits me and feels right? Therefore my energy will be like, you know, I'll be talking like right now, I'm like, oh my God, I can go through so many tensions, you know, and I'm enjoying this conversation with you, where if you were to say to me, right, networking event, your turn, what is it you do? And I'll be like, okay, I might, you know, the words might not even come out. So yeah, so that's what I mean by energy, is like, what works for you? What do you feel comfortable with? And that's something that with practice, I've noticed, if I'm able to explain naturally and, you know, enjoying the conversation I'm having with someone, what you're going to transmit, it's not the same if I'm talking to you with a smile, like if I'm going like, yeah, what do you want? You know, it's like, what's your next question? You're not going to get the same result, that's for sure. But yeah.
True. And I guess that kind of links back to what you said earlier about knowing where you are developmentally, not only in a professional context, but also a business building context. Networking wasn't for you. It was more, the words that came up for me were emergent, organic, intuitive. And I've noticed this as well, and I'll share something with you, that there was a point where I was invite, connect, propose to people, because it's probably my preferred way of building a business as well, through word of mouth and conversations and relationships. But I think I've noticed an intuition, that's a skill of intuition about when and when not to invite and connect. And that's been built over time of just really sensing the energy and the space between me and the person I'm in the conversation with, knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not. Because there's been times when I have invited when it might have not been a great fit, and actually it's come out in the wash later in the relationship. And I've gone back to that moment and be like, that was it. It wasn't even really right from the off. Does that resonate with you when I share that with you?
100%. You know, when I have some consultations, if I'm not sure, you know, it's when you're like saying to someone, right, well, this is what I offer, these are my prices, you know, take some time, think about it, and you know, we can just reconvene, or you know, have a follow-up email or whatever. That gives you time as well. It's not just about, oh, is the client going to want to work with me? Because so yeah, great, so that means I'm great. Or, oh no, the client didn't want to work with me, I must be crap. That's not what it is. I think, you know, you have those connections that you do or you don't, but that's part of life, isn't it? Because that's also how it can be with some friends. You're going to have more connection than with more chemistry, I'm going to say, than with others, or yeah, whether it's friends, family, peers, whatever. And that's okay. You know, not everyone is meant to be your client, nor are you meant to coach everyone. So it's trusting that as well. And I find that if you force something, the result is not gonna, that actually I'm saying this and I'm thinking, yeah, that was an acceptance moment. Like, you have to let go. It's like, yeah, this person felt right for me. Oh, and great, this person wants to work with me. Equally, you might have that sense of, oh, wow, I'd love to work with this person, but this person goes on and finds someone else to work with. Does that mean that you were not good? No, it doesn't. It's just that perhaps that person needs something else for now. And who is to say that this same person won't come back to you? I've had that.
Interesting examples, and yeah, acceptance around those themes. Where was I going to go there? I had it. I've got it. I've had a couple of conversations like these recently that are not published, and a couple of books that have come up in conversation is Relational Coaching by Eric DeHaan. And I think there's some studies out there around therapy, coaching, counseling, where they indicate that actually the most important thing is always the relationship, not the technique, not the theoretical stance. It's actually the relationship. And I think what we're talking about here in the infancy is actually tapping into how we relate to someone, how they relate to us, and is there compatibility to work together. Would you agree with that in terms of relationship being key?
100%. That's the number one element for me.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel comfortable with someone, how comfortable are you going to be in being collaborative with this person? What's the impact that it's going to be? If I think about this conversation you and I are having, if I didn't feel comfortable with you, do you think you would get that much out of me with your questions? I promise you wouldn't. You probably wouldn't even get a smile. So, and I'm quite, you can see on my face. So if the rapport is not there, if you don't feel, and I'm not even talking about the client here, is number one is us as well. If I don't feel comfortable with who I have in front of me, how is that the impact, the direct impact it's having on the session, on the conversation? It's because you're not going to be feeling comfortable to ask questions, to challenge your client's thinking. Sometimes you're going to be questioning, oh, should I not? And then that's going to have a direct impact on your own confidence, because then you'll be thinking, oh, I should have challenged, I should have said, I shouldn't have, I did at that. So if you don't feel it, don't go with it. It's okay to not take a client.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever talk about the relationship that you have with your client in a client session with them? Is that something that comes up ever? I feel like it'd be fascinating to explore that with clients. Like, let's look at our relationship. What's actually going on here? What's going on for you? What's going on for me? And have a really honest dialogue about that.
Yeah, that quite often, actually. There was one recently that was particularly impactful, because I was sensing something in the session. I don't want to go into details, but it was a coaching session. I could sense something which I ended up naming with the client, and it was, yeah, something I could sense that it wasn't directly with me, but I felt was having an impact. And I just shared a word that came up for me, and you should have seen the face of the other person. It was completely different, and it brought some sort of feeling, and since then the sessions have been, I'd say, even more collaborative, more open, and a certain relaxed aspect to it that wouldn't necessarily be there. It wasn't there before.
Much like life, the real challenging moments in the coaching relationship, or the tension points, can be the absolute watershed moments or the catalytic moments, right?
It takes practice and courage to build to do that as well, because it's not easy sometimes to feel like, oh, okay, I feel I want to share that, and actually sharing it. So, it's not either about beating yourself up by not sharing something. It's like, oh yeah, I could have. Then you reflect and it's like, yeah, maybe I could have done this or that, and you do it the next time. That's okay.
Really, really interesting topic. And relationships came up at the start of the conversation as well, I guess, at the start of your coaching practice. So interesting to hear we're diving into that now. What about the future? What does the future hold for you in your business building journey?
I have a couple of ideas that I'm going to be honest, I don't want to share just yet. But
oh, really? Why is that then? Don't want to make yourself accountable, or is it private?
No, it's more, no, it's like, let me get back to you on this one if you want. But it's a couple of projects, but I actually don't know. And it's interesting you would ask this, because that's what I've been recently working on with my coach as to what's next. I think that comes, you know, without sounding arrogant at all, but I feel like I'm in a good place right now. I have variety. I'm enjoying what I do, and when I do it. So I think I'm not entirely sure just yet what's next, but I shall let you know once it's all more specific. Yeah.
Look forward to hearing about it, and great to hear you're in a position where you feel like you're in a great place and you've got a strong platform to build upon. That's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, and also, you know, it's nice. It's almost like, oh, let's just enjoy this now. You know, as let's enjoy it while it lasts, because life is ever changing. So, you know, like going back to what I was saying earlier. So yeah, I'm feeling more like in a place like enjoying. Let's enjoy it for a bit and recoup to think about what's next. But yeah, we'll see. I'll let you know.
That's an interesting theme in itself as well, tuning into the moment and enjoying it, because often there's this whole, I see often in myself and others this whole scarcity or struggle and strife, always trying to get to the next stage, always trying to get to the next financial increment or the next milestone in the business, that you can just lose sight of what's happening in the here and now. And I think most business owners and practitioners can do with that useful reminder often around tuning into the here and now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the body as well, you know. Recently I've been bringing a bit more embodiment aspect into my sessions, and I think tapping into how am I really, what's happening for me, and what might be happening in my being right here as well. So not just the thinking, but what's my body telling me as well. So yeah, of course.
And when you bring, sorry, go on.
It's been an evolution. All these, you know, if we had this conversation like 5 years ago, we probably would be done already by now.
Yeah. And if we had this conversation 5 days ago, it probably would have been different as well, which is, for me, certainly, I don't know about you, it's interesting how things can evolve and move quickly from week to week, month to month, about how we think about coaching, how we approach building the business, being in the business of coaching.
Yeah, and I think this is the beauty as well, because the reflections might change. You know, again, I know I'm coming back to this, but I've mentioned a few times the mood and your energy, and it's so true. Like if I had woken up and got on the wrong foot, again, my energy wouldn't have been the same as the one I'm having with you right now. Therefore, my reflections would probably be not entirely either, but there might have been some slight different comments, or so, you know, I think you're spot on. 5 days ago, not just 5 years ago, but even 5 days ago, the conversation would have been different, the reflections. Also being mindful that what might be most alive for both of us right now in this conversation. I just came back from a session, so probably some of the stuff, I don't know for sure, but probably some of the stuff that are more alive for me were also related to how I was feeling, what might have been at the back of my mind and stuff like that. So, you know, do this once a month and see what comes up, and then we compare.
I love that share, and I couldn't agree more, because it's so interesting to pay attention to what's happening right now in the conversation between you and me, and why that is happening. Just the way we've flowed, the energy, the tune of it, and of course what's happened just before certainly comes into this space, whether that's good or bad, insightful, inspiring, or worrying. So yeah, love it. Thank you so much for sort of freestyling with me. I've really enjoyed it. We've looked forward, kind of. What if we look backwards? If you were to give yourself some advice at the start of your business building journey 10 years ago, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, one step at a time, patience. Yeah, and probably trust as well.
And obviously we've freestyled this conversation, so there wasn't any overarching themes that we spoke about before. Excuse the incredibly coaching question, but what are you taking from this conversation? What's come up for you?
I think one is nice to sort of dip back into you know, the past. There's a sense of, hey, I could go on. If it feels almost like unfinished, like we could carry on. There's that sense of, hey, I'm happy to share, and there might be some further bits that I feel might have been helpful or useful or whatever to share, or at least that I might have been happy to share in case it might be useful to someone. So yeah, there you go. Yeah,
relationships came up for me. How important the relationship is, relational coaching, patience and acceptance, what I heard from you. And of course you've got a coaching session to go to shortly, so I want to honor that. I could definitely go on, but was there anything specific that you wanted to share when you were thinking about other themes or topics just then, or are you happy to round it off where we are?
I think let's round it off, because otherwise I'm going to go off again and I don't have time for that. But yeah, no, thank you. It was really nice. And yeah, actually, do you know what? One thing I would say, it's nice to just freestyle it. So to me, that, you know, I'm glad I didn't look at prepare at to what am I going to say, what am I not going to say. I think, you know, just being here and see what emerged, that was nice. So thank you.
You're so welcome. And freestyling it, what I think I've heard is that's happened for you in your business building, and as you develop confidence as a coach, turning up and freestyling it for all of us can be quite important, right?
Yeah, like, yeah, for me, again, going back to the niche thing, you know, I remember how there was a few days where I really stressed, like, oh, everyone else seems to have a niche. And once I let go of that, things came up naturally. So yeah, the freestyling, I think that goes well with me as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Laure. I've loved the conversation. All the best for your next coaching appointment shortly, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah. All right.